No.
So if you don't want to be recorded, just switch your camera off. That'll be fine.
I was only half listening. And my computer started talking to me in the
oh dear.
voice.
Terrifying when that happens, isn't it?
So as long as it wasn't me that you were talking to.
No.
Good. Gresh is just arriving. Good. So hi Gresh.
Hello.
Hi Brian. Nice to see you.
Hello.
Yeah. Chris might not be able to make it. Jan might be here, so he's on site.
Chris not gonna make it. I've just spoken to him. He's on his way.
Okay.
Got up on site. Okay.
Sorry, I'm late.
Jan's late for a time mastery workshop.
I know. I've got things to learn. Obviously, this is the workshop for me. What can I say?
You're just proving a point, Jan. So.
Exactly. You paid me to do that, didn't you, Kevin?
We're fining people, Jan. So what's the fine, Kevin?
So what is the fine? The fine is to do the washing up afterwards. There you go.
Okay.
So,
Adrian.
Yes.
Who asked your opinion?
I'm Kevin's stooge, you see. So.
That is it. Good to see you, though, Adrian.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, we'll catch up soon, okay?
Okay, my darling.
Okay. Yeah, that is 100%. Well, it's 100% the people that were going to come from the R&B. So well done, you guys, because we've missed you at a few of these in the past. So it's nice you've all made it. So I know a few of you have done the mastery workshops before. A few of this is your first time. So one of the key things I want to sort of get across to you all is this is one of a series of 6 workshops that we cover different areas: time mastery, finance, sales, customer, and team. So they rotate every 3 months. I know a few of you have been to time mastery workshop before, and I always say to people, look, you've probably got to come 2 or 3 times to get a full sort of to get everything out of it. Just coming to one workshop and thinking suddenly I'm going to be a master of that particular topic, it's never going to happen. Each time you come, you'll get a little bit extra learning from it, although the content is the same, the audience is slightly different, and therefore the discussions are going to be slightly different as well. So I am going to ask you all to put yourself onto mute, just so there's no sort of background noise, and if you do want to swear any time, you can do without upsetting anybody else. We do have a chat room, so I'll start the chat off. So I will ask a few times to actually just type in the chat box. But okay, if you do have a particular question, please just unmute yourself. If you just push the space bar, it'll temporarily unmute yourself while you talk, and then when you let go, you'll be back on mute again. So that's a nice, easy way to make this work. So what we're going to sort of look at then is, just call my screen back. Everyone comes into certainly this particular workshop with in their minds of challenges that they have around time management. So what I'd like you to do to start with is really think about what you'd like to get out of today. So perhaps what is your biggest challenge? How can I make sure that I give you some real good value for your investment in time with me this afternoon? So just put it in the chat box. It means we can go back to it afterwards. So do you have a particular challenge around time management? Is there a particular area? What's something that, if I could solve that problem for you, you'd go away a very happy person at the end of this workshop. So take a few minutes, just write something in. So I got somebody else. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to have to let somebody in. Somebody didn't book in. Oops. Well, there must be more than Claire that's got something there. Right. So. Okay, so let me have a look, see what we've got then. So Claire, workload is so high, I never managed to leave on time. So it's a workload thing. Jan, best intentions, I feel like the focus shifts due to changing priorities. No feeling time to do the thing. So that's really about being reactive and constant, being pulled from one place to another. So that's a very common theme there. Above the default diary, prioritizing jobs, so one late job overrun doesn't affect the next one. So sort of planning work. Actually break down tasks into advanced to match specific time slots available. Okay, so is that, so Wendy, when you say accurately breaking down tasks, is that something you struggle with, to actually accurately break them down, or is that what you just unmute yourself a second?
Yeah, to break it down to specific bits. And
So
then,
is that what you're struggling with, breaking down the task?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah. I'll if I don't cover that, be an area where I think it will be relevant, just bring it up, and then we can perhaps use an example that can do that. I've got a way to help you with that one. Prioritizing again, the default diary. For those that haven't heard, I'll show you a bit more about the default diary later. So I think that's most people there. Good. So, I mean, hopefully you can see from what everybody's written in the chat that everyone, everybody that I've come across struggles at some point with time management. It's just one of those things that comes about being in work, that there is generally more stuff to get done than you can ever get done. So what we're really going to be looking at is ways to handle that. There's no such thing as time management. You can't manage time. Every one of you here, has a different level of knowledge. Has different physical attributes. Some of us are good looking, some of us are not so good looking, some of us are potentially brainier than others. But every single one of us has 24 hours in a day. Okay, it's the one asset that we all have. We all have the same amount of, no one's born with more time than somebody else. It's just how we deal with the time that we've got that generally separates successful and happy people to unsuccessful and stressed people. Okay, and so we've got to manage it in our own way. And the way that Gresh manages it will be slightly different to the way Jan manages it, to the way Megan manages it. You've got to find your way, but I think one of the key things is to understand is if you feel it's not right, then it generally isn't right. And you've got to then work on a way to actually make that better. Okay, and you won't go from where you are to being perfect overnight. Sometimes it's going to take a lot of time and discipline. So think of it about like a marathon. You're running a marathon, and the end result is to have real control, and a good, I'd say, work-life balance, but more a work-life harmony. but the time it takes to actually get there is going to be different, and the amount of effort you've got to put in is still going to be quite high. You know, you're not going to just wake up one day and everything's going to be rosy. So I start all of my workshops with this little PowerPoint, okay, this little slide. Yes, my formula for life success. Those that have seen this before will understand that, yeah, our have is our dream and goals, our be is our knowledge, attitude, and skills, and our do is our actions. So when it comes to really sort of thinking about time management, all of these three things have got to be in play. You've got to have the knowledge, attitude, and skills to have great time management. You've got to be doing the right things. But the number one for me always is you've got to have a goal. You've got to have clarity around what that looks like. So if you're sitting there thinking, you know, I don't have control of my time, I'm being pulled from pillar to post, what I would say is one of the first things you've got to do is think about, well, what does success look like from time management for you? Okay, so that might be a feeling, it might be, you know, the way a day works, the way a week works, but there's got to be something that you can visualize that looks like success. Okay, so if I pick on, let's pick on somebody who was late. Because that's the punishment for turning up to a time management course late. So Megan, do you want to just unmute yourself? So what does success look like from a time perspective for you?
Showing up on time.
Okay. So not being late for meetings,
yeah,
not
just
being late for things that are going on.
Yeah, I do struggle with sort of having spare time. You know, I do everything off the very last minute, which I do quite well and get away with most of the time. But yeah, I think I'd be a lot less stressed if I.
So if I asked you to sort of write a page that said, you know, my perfect, you know, time management, I will feel happy with my time management when this happens. Would you be able to write that?
Yeah, and it would look like you know, I'd feel better about my time management when I you know, can accurately plan how long things are going to take. And actually, you know, meet those targets and you know, give myself some spare time as well.
Great. Okay.
So I can get it done in 5 minutes.
So the first thing I would say for all of you is to write that little page down. You know, it might be a few paragraphs, but write down what is it that good time management for you looks like. What does it feel like? Because if you're trying to have better time management and you don't know what that looks like or feels like, then you're never going to achieve it. Okay, you can't create something you can't visualize. There's a little phrase that we use, IVVM: idealize, visualize, verbalize, materialize. If you can't have an idea of what it looks like, if you can't visualize it and you can't verbalize it to somebody else, then you can't make it happen. You can't materialize it. Okay, so that's a real key thing within time management. We all say, oh, I wish I had more time, but well, what does that mean? You know, what does more time mean? You can't create more time because there's 24 hours in a day. You can't suddenly go out to the shop and buy another 2 hours. Yeah, what you've got to do is go, right, I get 24 hours. You know, what does a perfect day, what does a perfect week look like? Then once you've done that, you can then compare that to the reality and then say, right, well, the reality is these are all things I don't have. And then we've got to work on ways to actually sort of fill the gap, get you from where you are to where you want to be. Okay, so that's really is, you know, number one phase. If you can't be clear what it is you want with time management, then you don't know who you need to be or what you need to do. And sometimes it's going to be, it's going to be quite scary. You're going to think, geez, it just is, I'm so bad at this that, I've got a lot of, progress to make. And I think one of the things that Megan said there, and I find this a lot, I think I come to it a little bit later as well, is what we've created here is habits. Now, one of the worst habits you can have is getting away with being late. Okay, so if you spent your life, from an early age, and it generally goes back to school days, if you can look back at school days, and if you were that person that always got your homework in, but it was a last minute job, then you're going to struggle with time management. Because your brain is set that I will always succeed, and silly phrases like I work better under pressure come in. When I'm under pressure, I work better. When I've got a deadline, I work better. So your natural coping mechanism is to leave things to the last minute, because in the past, you've been able to do it at the last minute. The problem as we grow and we take on more responsibility in a business is we have too many things that we've got to deal with the last minute, and that's when we start to drop the ball and certain things and deadlines get missed. Okay, but I'll come a little bit more onto that in a little while. So one of the things that we've got to understand is why are goals important to us? Because one of the best time management factors is understanding your priorities. And the only way you can understand your priorities is understand what the goal is. Without a goal, you can't have a priority. So this nice little phrase from Alice in Wonderland: if you don't know where you're going, any road will actually get you there. What we've got to be clear is, in our day-to-day life, we've got to be really clear what our goals are and understand how they actually work. So within a business, and so this is very much so for those of you working from the R&B, you're working within an environment. For some of you, you're the actual head of the businesses. One of the key things for this is within the business has got to understand why it's here, right from the baseline of what the business is all about. And this is what I call a little planning pyramid, that you've got to understand what the core values of the company are. We've got to understand why the business is here in the first place. And then as we start getting more and more focused, the focus becomes shorter and shorter term. So then we need our 3 to 5 year goals and targets. We need our annual budgets. We need our quarterly actions, our weekly schedule, our daily accountability. So everything must stem back to, really stems back to the big picture. So this is long-term stuff. This is short-term stuff. So if you don't know what your long-term goals are, so if you're working here, if you don't know what your 12-month goals or your 90-day goals are, then your ability to schedule and prioritize in a short term won't be there, because everything will be as important as everything else. When everything else is important, then you don't know what you should do first, what you should not do, what you should delegate, and that's when you'll just get overloaded and you'll start to struggle. So not only do I want you to set a goal for what good time management looks like, but you've got to look into your business and where you are, the role that you play within the business, and be clear what your number one goal is. So what's my number one goal? What does success in my business, in my role, look like? If I've got clarity around that, then I can start planning and I can start scheduling, I can start prioritizing. If you don't have clarity around this, then that will be one of the key reasons you're struggling with time management. Okay, so, and this is not always easy. When you've got multiple roles, you've got multiple things on, sometimes clarity around the goal won't be there. And that's when you've got to sort of really sit down and write these things down, write the goals down, write the plans down. And the reason goal setting is so important is because we have this little thing in our brain called the reticular activating system. Okay, we call it, we shorten it to the RAS. And as I say, it sits here. So this is sort of really in the what we call the reptilian part of our brains, the oldest, most established part of our brain. And what happens is information comes in through your 5 senses, you know, through your spinal column, from touch and feel, what you hear, what you see, what you taste. And this part of the brain, the filter, so it's got to filter out the information that you don't need. So we're going to do a little test, and I know a few of you have done this before, but it's always worth doing it again. So I want you to look around the room that you're in at the moment, and I want you to count the number of red things that you see. Okay, just look around the room. How many red things do you see? Okay, and then just type the number in the chat box. We'll see who can count the highest, who's got the most red things. 5 from Andy. 12. Great question's got a lot of red things. No, nothing in Adrian's room. Yeah, 6. Okay, so keep looking at the screen. Now I want you to type in the number of blue things you saw. So as you look around the room, how many blue things did you see? Don't look, Andy. I see you looking around the room. I don't want you to look around again. So don't look around. Just keep looking at the screen and remember how many blue things you saw. Because you saw them, because you looked around the room and you saw everything in the room. Okay, so I'm feeling there's a few guesses. Adrian's looking around the room, and I've told you not to look around the room. There's always a cheat, isn't there? So if you think about it, you know, when I asked you to look for red things, I set your reticular activating system to look for red things. So it filtered out, it had to filter out everything else you saw, because your brain can't deal with that amount of information. So if you don't set goals in life, if you don't set goals in work, yeah, then what your brain isn't doing is it's not able to focus on what it needs to know in order to move forward. And that's what happens is you'll either slow yourself down because you're taking in too much information and your brain can't handle it, or you'll just ignore all of the things that are relevant and that you actually need to actually work on. There's a little, there's a book that is quite famous, if I don't know if anybody's read it, called The Secret. And it's all about a concept called the law of attraction. Okay, so if you focus on something, you can sort of materialize it into your life. Okay, so it's a very famous book. It's worth a read. I mean, there are some good bits in it, but it's a load of rubbish. Okay, you can't materialize anything into your life. It's either there or it's not there. But what you can do is you can set your reticular activating system to look out for things that are already there. Yeah, and if you can see it, yeah, if you're in tune with it and you're looking for it, then it'll tell me, oh God, yeah, I wasn't thinking of that. So if you imagine you've just bought, you know, like Adrian's got a little mini, is it a mini Clubman behind you, Adrian? So imagine you just bought a mini Clubman. Yeah, you've never thought about buying a mini before. You bought a mini Clubman, and now when you drive around, yeah, because you've actually got that mini Clubman, you'll start to see lots of other mini Clubmans. Okay, because your reticular activating system, you know, you're looking for similarities to people like you, and that's how your brain is wired and designed. So you've got to be very clear what you set your RAS on. So the other reason we set goals, positive goals, is if you set negative goals, yeah, then you'll start looking for the negative, because that part of the brain doesn't know the difference between do and don't. So if I said to you, don't think of a pink elephant, yeah, in order to actually comprehend that, the first thing you've got to do is what? Think of a pink elephant. Okay, so even though I've said don't think of it, then your brain is saying, I don't understand do and don't, it just thinks of a pink elephant. Then it consciously has to work out, well, should I be thinking about it? Should I not be thinking about it? So goals should always be set in the positive. What is it you do want? Because that sets the RAS to actually go looking for it. Okay. Any questions on that? Anything that's you want me to sort of explain a bit more? Well, we have a little phrase within Action Coach called BFOs, blinding flashes of the obvious. You know, those. Of course, that happens. Yeah. So any BFOs from what we've covered there? Does that sort of stand out? Any examples that people can think of? You can unmute yourself, or you can type it in the chat box. No? Okay, cool. Good. So once we understand, you know, this is how our brains work, then we've got to start looking at the types of goals that we set. So there's 3 types of goals that we can set ourselves. The first one, which is extremely powerful, but quite short-lived, is the ability to move away from pain. So if you're under pain, you will do whatever it takes to actually move away from it. And this comes back to why people leave things to the last minute. If I leave it to the last minute, yeah, then I'm actually creating pain, because if I don't do it, there's consequences. And if those consequences are quite high, go back to the homework. If I don't have my homework in, the teacher's upset, or I get kicked out of school, whatever it is, if that pain is quite high, then what happens is our brain is designed to keep us away from pain. So our adrenaline levels go up, yeah, our endorphin levels go up, and therefore we feel that we're actually performing at a higher level of performance. That's why there's this fictitious feeling that we work better under pressure. Okay, it's not that you work better under pressure, it's just because you get the chemical rushes of actually moving forwards. And studies have shown this. What happens is you become more slapdash, your attention to detail goes, and you generally do just enough. Okay, so if you're the sort of person that has always been a last minuter, yeah, and you have that feeling of work, and has anybody got that? I know I picked on Megan earlier, but anybody else has that sort of feeling that they work better under pressure and they have a history of leaving things to the last minute? Anybody brave enough to admit to that? Brian? Yeah, do you want to unmute yourself, Brian?
Yeah, very, very much so in the past.
Yeah. Okay.
And
can you think? Yeah.
I'm just thinking in terms of like now.
Yeah.
If a customer says to me, "Oh, no rush," I will leave it and leave it and leave it and leave it and leave it rather than get it done. Yeah. Yeah. Until they're jumping up and down saying, "Is it ready yet?" Yeah. Yeah. So it's that, you know, you've created a coping mechanism and a behavioral mechanism that needs an element of urgency before it then sort of registers and then you spring into action. Yeah. Okay. And if you trace that back through your life, is there, can you sort of see when you were at school or, you know, when you're a youngster where that sort of behavior started? I was going to say definitely at uni. Yeah. I was thinking back, and probably at school as well. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because uni was doing the assignments at the last minute, and then the pain was when the computer crashes and you got no time to get it all done. And I think back then there was also almost an element of coolness about it, wasn't there? That, you know, because I could never do that. I was much more of a methodical person. I like to get things done and know they were out of the way. And I had mates that would boast, "Oh no, I just did it in the last sort of 2 hours," and it really peed me off that they got a better mark than I did. You know, it was like, you know, and then you start thinking, well, actually, perhaps I should leave it to the last minute, they did. So these behaviours that we create, you know, everything that we do has a reason why we do it. You know, it's something, a behaviour, coping mechanism that we've sort of learned, and it works for us in most cases. But what we're finding is it's not actually working for us potentially now. So moving away from pain,
Really, really powerful, gets us into action, gets things done. Okay, and we don't really think about it. You know, if I put you into pain now, if you put your hand into a fire and it was too hot, you automatically take your hand out of the fire. You don't think about it, you don't plan about it, it just happens. The next level of goal setting is really about our vision. Okay, and this is why I say about IVVM, idealize, visualize, verbalize, and this is where I think the real power of goals comes in. It's not what you're moving away from pain, it's moving towards pleasure. So the moving towards pleasure kicks in another form of chemicals in our brain, really around serotonin, oxytocin. It's the sort of pleasurable chemicals that our brain gives off that makes us feel good. It's like our natural high. So if I set a goal and I achieve that goal, a bit like if anyone watched England last night, anybody not watch England, you know, that sense when they've worked to win, worked to actually achieve a goal. They're not moving away from pain, they're moving towards pleasure, that pleasure of actually winning, you know, a semi-final on Sunday, moving towards winning a final. You know, that you saw the look on their faces when they scored that second goal, you know, just that, you know, amazing high that you get. Okay, and that's the pleasure we get of actually you're working towards a goal. Now it's harder to get that. You have to work really hard, you have to keep focus, it's not about what you do, sometimes it's about what you don't do. And that's why you've got to have real clarity of focus of, well, what is the goal? And is the high I'm going to get from achieving that goal strong enough to actually overcome the hard work I've got to do to actually achieve it? And this is where most people fail with this, is they don't set smart enough goals. So remember, SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic in the time frames, but also they're not emotional enough. Yeah, they're not inspiring enough. So there isn't that sense of achievement when they've actually achieved it. And this takes time, this takes thought process. Yeah, and you will be challenged along the way, and it'll be easier to give up than it will be to continue. The final level, which few people get to, but not everybody, you don't need it. I mean, if the move towards goals you keep you motivated, keep you moving forwards, that's fine. But there's another set of goals that really sort of kick in, which is are actually what we do for others, helping other people. Now, this is good because, you know, once you've got everything you want, what can happen is you can get a bit stale and a bit complacent. You're not moving forwards anymore. When you're helping others, you can always help other people. Now, what this part of the brain does, you know, is it's really our bonding, our relationship brain. Okay, it's our feeling of actually connectedness to other people. The problem with this part of our brain is it sabotages us, and it's for those people that actually are really nice people and they like helping other people. So they put other people's goals before their own goal. So if a customer phones up and says, I want this, right, I'll deal with the customer. If a team member phones up and says, I want this, I'll help them. So I'm helping everybody else achieve their goals, not focused on my own goals, because that makes me feel good. I like helping people. Yeah, it gives me, again, the serotonin and oxytocin chemicals that we need to actually drive us forwards. So we've got to be careful with this. Is if you know, I'm where I want to be, I can sort of work on this and help others. But if I'm not actually in charge of my own time, then we've got to be careful that we don't get sidetracked and hijacked by, you know, achieving other people's goals rather than focus on our own. I'll come back to that in a little bit when I look at what we call the time target. So a real, you know, I can't hammer home this enough. You know, be clear what good time management is, but then everything that you do, all of those roles that you have, all of the things that you're trying to achieve, you've got to be clear what the goal of each one is. Yeah, and the more goals you've got, the more challenges you're going to have to actually dedicate enough time to each of them. If I've got to do one thing, yeah, I can really focus on doing that one thing really well. If I've got 20 things, well, how the hell do I manage my time to achieve all 20 things? So you've got to bring this down and say, right, well, what are the priorities? What's most important to me to achieve my goal, but within the goal of the company as well? And then we set what we call SMARTY goals, because if those were young enough, remember, you know, SMARTIES have the answer. If you set specific, measurable, realistic, within a time frame, inspiring, emotional goals, then you're going to be much better within your time management. Okay. Any questions on goal setting? So when you are setting your goals, you know, think about the goals that are going to be important to you. So is it time with the family? You know, how much time do I actually spend with my family? Is it time for myself doing my hobbies? So for me, you know, golf is a really important part of my life. Okay, so spending time with my wife. Yeah, but I've got lots of things that are important to me. So sometimes I have to make a sacrifice, you know, but too much of a sacrifice in one area is bad for you. So finding that balance, that harmony between them all is really, really critical. So for me, I like to play golf a couple of times a week. I like to play tennis once a week, but I know if I'm doing that, I'm not spending time with my wife. So I've got to book that time in. Then I've got my work time. So many things I've got to juggle, but I've got to get strong about what is most important, and then things start to fall into place. You know, you can actually start saying no to things. So really sort of sit down and set, you know, what is important to me? What do I need to get done? What's my goal within my role, within my business, and get real clarity around what that is. And then you're setting your reticular activating system to then help you actually achieve that. If you don't set it, everything else is important, and you'll get hijacked and repeat the same processes that you've been going through. So that's really, you know, about the have, you know, be, do, have, you know, being clear what the goal is and what you want to have. The next area I'm going to work on is the beliefs. So these beliefs, where do they come from? You know, something I hold to be true. So if you've got a belief that, you know, I need to be busy, yeah. So for those of you who are business owners, you know, there's this feeling that, you know, if I'm not at my desk, if I'm not working hard, then, you know, my team are going to look at me and think I'm not pulling my weight. You know, if you know, as a team member, you might have these feelings that, you know, about time management and being busy, okay, and doing stuff, do. There are times when you've got to do stuff, but there's also times when thinking is far more important. Actually creating space to do nothing, to actually just sit there and think. And part of thinking is planning, yeah, to actually plan it before you actually do it. There's that old adage, you know, fail to plan, plan to fail. But if you don't create the time, then everything's going to be sort of back to reactiveness. So if you are busy, then you've got to sort of understand that's not the norm. That's not what it should be. Successful people generally don't feel that they're overly busy. They feel at the end of the day they've been very, very productive. They've got lots of things done, and have achieved things, and then they move on. So we've got to understand how we invest our time. That time is really our most important asset, because if you lose time, no amount of money can actually earn it back. Now, if you spend money, you can actually get that time back. If you spend money, you can save time. So just hands up, who's got a dishwasher? Okay, so it's good. Half of us got dishwashers. You know, you invest in a dishwasher to save you time. Okay, you know, Zoom meetings. You know, I've invested a lot in Zoom because it saves me time. Yeah, sometimes we've got to invest in things that are actually going to save us time. Computer programs should save us time. So we've got to be clear that sometimes we have to invest money, and time up front in order to save time later on. And that investment is well worth it. So if there are things that you've been putting off that could save you an hour, 2 hours, then make sure that you sort of look at it and plan it in and see if you can actually do that. Okay, because it generally, if you can save time, then it is worth. In my book, it's worth the investment. So the other belief is until you respect your own time, no one else is going to respect it for you. And this is really true for those people that feel that they're, sometimes get a bit walked over, that they're taken advantage of. Kevin, give it to Kevin, he'll always do that. Yeah, and you end up, with a pile of stuff on your desk, and everyone else goes home at 5 o'clock. Yeah, you've got to start respecting your own time and say, look, my time is as precious as anybody's time. If I'm an employee, great, I'm employed to do something. I'm not saying you turn around and say, no, I'm not going to do this with no alternative. But if you're feeling, I think, was it you, Claire, that said that, I've always got more to do at the end of the day. And, so there's an element there of actually being strong in your own mindset again about your goals and saying, look, I want to work X amount of hours per day, per week. And then making it clear how we fit this in. Because if you don't bring that up to your boss's attention, then people are just going to say, well, Claire's all right with that. Let's give her more work. Let's give her more work. Let's give her more work. So we've got to start getting strength to respect our time and go, no. I mean, one of the biggest time management savers, is the word no. I can't do that. Yeah, you can only get, you can't get a pint into a quart pot, as they say. There's only so much you can actually get done. So you've got to be clear, right, that's what I'm willing to invest. And therefore, I'm not saying no and then walk away from it. I need to work with you to actually find a way that these things can get done, but it's not me that is having to do them all. Otherwise, you become the bottleneck, and then you start letting people down, and that's when nothing worse than saying you're going to do something and then not delivering it, because then you've let yourself down, you've let that other person down. So part of this is to understand what our limiting beliefs are, and this is a nice little concept that we have, which I use a lot, called above and below the line. So above the line people take ownership, hold themselves accountable, and take responsibility for their actions. Below the line people live in blame, excuses, and denial. And the first thing you've got to look at is your self-awareness. Yeah, look in the mirror first and say, am I a person that takes real ownership of my time? I hold myself accountable and I have full responsibility. Or am I a person that can fall into blaming other people, making excuses, or just denying that there's a problem? So imagine you're around a person that was constantly below the line. Yeah, it was always whinging, moaning, about things. And you're an above the line person. If you spend 15 minutes with that person, well, Claire, you laugh, so can you unmute yourself? You don't have to mention any names who this person is.
Sorry, I was reading Gareth's comment.
Oh, right. So problem's always putting others before myself. Yeah. So imagine you're around that sort of below the line person, blame, excuse, and denial. After about 15, 20 minutes, how do you feel?
It gets to you, but you have to try and keep being positive and try and talk to the other person to try and bring them out of it and explain why there is another way of looking at things.
Exactly. Okay. So that's taking ownership is maintaining yourself above the line. So staying up here. So if this was the water line, this is your boat that you're rowing, because we've got an oar. Okay, there's an oar there that we're rowing our boat. Yeah. actually staying above is really hard if we're constantly being dragged down here. And if this pull is too great, we can't pull the person up, then danger is they sink the boat. And it's that one rotten apple in the barrel destroys the barrel. So if you are a sort of person that has tendencies to be down here, then you've got to catch yourself. As soon as you start blaming and making excuses for being late and not achieving things, you've got to get over that and take responsibility and say, the only person that's going to get me to where I need to be with my time management is me. Nobody else, no one else can help. You know, I have to take ownership of this, and I have to create an environment in which I can behave in the right way. So if we want to change, you know, if we're sitting there and say, well, look, we might be a bit on the line or a bit below the line, or maybe we're around people that are below the line, and we want to change that behavior, what we've got to understand is human beings are more like an iceberg, okay? And the behavior is what we see on the surface, is just the tip of that iceberg. And that behavior drives our actions, our decisions, and ultimately the results. So let's just use an example of let's call it Fred. You know, Fred's behavior is meaning that Fred is really struggling with time management. He's always late, you know, he's never achieving things on time, and he's always whinging and moaning about it. Okay, and we're trying to manage Fred. Now, Fred might be ourselves, but we'll use it as a third party at this stage. If I want to change his behavior, then I've got to really dig deep within, understand his psyche of what's causing this behavior to happen. Now, the first question I've got to say is, has Fred got the skills he needs in order to change his behavior? Now, this is really why we're here today, because, you know, coming onto a webinar, workshop, reading a book, watching a video is a way to improve our skills. Okay, so I'll give you, as we go through this, some techniques, a bit like setting goals, etc. These are just skills. These are learnings that you pick up and go, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll start to use that. So building on somebody's skills, is that generally easy or hard? Just unmute yourself if you want to. Is that an easy or hard thing? Jan?
So I think that's an easy thing. The behaviour is more deeply rooted, so it's harder to change.
Yeah, but coming on a workshop, training somebody, giving a book to read is generally quite easy, isn't it? So this is quite easy. Now, if they come on the course, they learn some skills, that doesn't change the behaviour, then the problem is because it's at a deeper level. And a deeper level, bit like we were saying about Brian, is they've got a set of beliefs, core beliefs that are actually making them think that their way of acting is better than doing it the way they've been told. So a bit like Brian. Brian's belief is, you know, if I leave it to the last minute, I work better under pressure, and that's the way I've always done it. Now, how easy is it to change somebody's beliefs? If skills is relatively easy, how would I change somebody's beliefs? Andy, what do you reckon?
I think sometimes people actually aren't aware of what their own beliefs are.
Correct.
So actually making them aware of what their beliefs are and how those beliefs are limiting their behaviour.
Yep. So Claire's got their, you know, can depend how receptive they are, but beliefs can be quite hard to change. Now, they are quite hard to change, but Jan's right, is the best way is you've got to bring them to their attention. And sometimes they don't see it. You know, they don't see it for themselves that this is going to be a problem. So it's hard, and sometimes, you know, certainly if we're managing somebody, you know, and maybe it's ourselves, that actually confronting those beliefs actually makes us feel quite bad. Makes us feel uneasy. We call it perturbation. You know, ooh, we start to feel a little bit perturbed about it, a bit worried about it. You know, why I've got to change. I know I've got to change, but I don't know how to change, or I'm worried about changing. And as soon as we start to feel bad about something, automatically our brain goes in to move away from pain. So the first thing we're going to do is actually do whatever it takes to move away from pain. And in that situation, what's that most likely to be? So if I feel, I know I've got to do something about, a bit like Brian. Okay, I'm going to pick on you, Brian, because you're good enough and volunteers. Actually, I chose you.
That's all right, Kevin.
So you've got that belief that, you know, putting things off, leaving it to the last minute. Yeah, and that belief, you know, is quite ingrained. You've been doing it for a long time. Now I'm challenging you, Brian, saying, Brian, you know, can you see now that that is detrimental to actually being successful? Yeah, and you're going, yes, I can see it, but I don't know how to change, and changing looks like hard work, and I don't feel particularly good about it.
Sorry, Kevin. What I was going to say is to a degree, yes, I can see it.
Yep.
And yes, I agree with you. The difficulty is where the belief has come from is because it was reinforced.
Yep.
Yeah. So say like the assignments, all my best scores were when I left it to the last minute.
Yep.
The one where I did it over 3 to 4 weeks was actually my worst score.
Yeah.
So that's the reinforcement of the belief.
Exactly. You know, so there will always be a history for all of us, a history of reinforcement of the belief. Now, sometimes those beliefs are good beliefs, yeah, and that's a good thing to do and to have. But sometimes they're bad beliefs, yeah. And if they're a bad belief and we think, oh God, it's going to be hard to change and difficult, then, you know, Wendy, you're spot on. The easiest thing for us to do is ignore it. Yeah, go into denial. Run away from it. Don't face, and we end up putting up with it, and we change our life, and we fit around that fact that we're not going to change. Now, that's okay. I'm not saying you have to change, but if you don't change, then that behavior is going to stay the same. And, you know, in my book, you're not going to achieve the success that you could actually achieve. So, yeah. So, Claire, you have to be a strong person to accept it and, you know, and to actually change. And you've got to want it. You know, the benefit of actually doing it has got to outweigh that. But Brian's point is really, really sort of valid. That, you know, there'll be things that have happened that have created your view of that's the way you work. Now, for some of you, you've worked with chaotic people, yeah, and you know, so you've seen them succeed or do okay being chaotic, and therefore you'll repeat those behaviours. So always, you've got to look at your behaviours. Are they working for me? They're working against me. Can I just go and learn some skills? Do I need to challenge my beliefs? Now, it's hard to challenge them ourselves because sometimes we don't see it. And that's why having a coach, having a mentor, having somebody to help you with that, for me, is so important. Because as I say, you can't always see your bald spot. You know, you don't really see it. You don't know what it would be. And, you know, we're only halfway down the iceberg here, because the next level is somebody's values. And this is a core belief that they really hold to be true. So if changing somebody's beliefs is hard, if that belief is so ingrained it's now a core value to them, how easy is it to change somebody's values? Very, very, I saw Claire mouth the word very there. It's nigh on impossible. Okay? The only thing that's going to change somebody's values, yeah, is a life changing event. Okay, so and you can see this in things like smoking. You know, for a lot of people, changing smoke, you know, giving up smoking. You know, have they got the skill to give it up? Do they understand that smoking is going to kill you? Yes, they do. You know, their belief system, yeah, they can change that if they want to, but they still identify with being a smoker. Yeah, and they value the benefits of smoking, you know, the social side, whatever it might be. It's not until they go to the doctor and say, you've got 6 months to live, do they actually then go, oh, okay, perhaps I better do something about this. So values are extremely hard to change. Yeah. So, and the final one right at the bottom, which I sort of alluded to with the smoking side, is an identity. If you have an identity around that behavior, yeah, and the way to sort of think about identity is what you say to yourself about yourself when you're by yourself. When you look in that mirror, who do you see? Yeah, if that identity is linked to that behavior, then yeah, that's really tough. The only way you're going to change that is basically mind-altering drugs or cognitive therapy. Okay, and that is, yeah, that's going to take quite a while to actually change that. Now, there is a fifth one, which is actually the easiest one to change all of this. And that is actually changing the environment in which you're working. So, because sometimes it's, you know, you might, if you're looking at these, yeah, I've got the skills and beliefs I'm working on, but sometimes the actual environment in which you're in has a big impact on how you behave. And this one would come to if you work in an open plan office, you know, if you've got lots of people around you, if there's loads of things going on, you know, if you're in front of a computer all the time, if you've got lots and lots of distractions and things going on, and you're not a person that really works well in that environment, then you'll struggle. And sometimes changing the environment can actually be the biggest impact to actually improving your time management. Okay, so if you look at any behavior, and we're looking at behavior within a time management perspective here. So if you look at your time management and go, I do have these tendencies to leave things to the last minute, not be organized, I don't set goals, I don't plan. And you go, right, I'm going to do something about this. Then the first thing is, have I got the skills to do it? Okay, I'm going to give you some today, but there might be some more skills you need. Read some more time management books. Yeah. No, I think I've got the skills. So is it a beliefs thing? You know, well, what's my limiting belief that's holding me back? Brian, is the fact that I last minute things, yeah, and I work better under pressure. Right? Can I change that belief, or is it such an ingrained one that it's now a value? Yeah, if it's an identity, then I've got to really work hard at changing that. Or can I just change the environment and perhaps put myself, you know, get my desk in a better place, that's quieter, that I've got all the things I need around me. You know, one of the tricks when I started business, and when you start a business, you're wearing a number of hats, was to have 3 desks. Yeah, so you have a sales desk where you do your sales and marketing, you have an operations desk where you do your operations work, and you have a finance and admin desk where you do your finance and admin. Okay, I didn't have the physical space to have 3 chairs and 3 desks, so I had folders. So I had 3 folders. I had my sales and marketing folder, my finance folder, and my coaching folder. And in my, you know, when I came to do my work, I only got the folder out that was the work I was going to do. Anything finance goes in the finance folder. I don't look at it. So I created an environment in which was conducive to give the behavior that I was working on. Otherwise, I'd be sitting there doing finance, you know, and a client would phone up, you know, or, you know, I'd start thinking, oh, I should be doing some sales and marketing. And it was all too confusing and nothing was really getting done. So 2 really good tools, above the line, below the line. Make sure you're above the line accountability, responsibility, and the iceberg. If we need to change behavior, think about which one of those it is that we need to work on. The next one, I know a lot of you have done DISC profiles, some of you have still got to do them, but DISC is a really good indicator, I think, of where time management problems come in. So for those that haven't done DISC, it's a very simple system. We have over here task-focused people, who are Ds and Cs, outgoing people, so these are more extrovert people. They speak before they think. Then we've got our ISSs, who are people, and our CSs that are more reserved people. So when we look at this and we think, you know, for each of these profiles, I'll go through each one. So these are generally our driving, determined doers. You know, they get things done, quite task focused. So generally speaking, these people are quite good at time management. Okay, because they're quite task focused, they get things done, and they're quite outgoing in the fact they'll just tell people, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't care if I not, you know, piss somebody off by saying no. Their problems around time management will be no one else will do it as well as they could do it. Yeah, they'll take on too many things and try and fix too many things at one time. Yeah, and they tell people to do things, but they don't get them bought into doing it. So they think they've delegated it, but they find they haven't. It hasn't got done, and they're constantly chasing people up. Okay, so for every profile, there's a strength in that profile, but there's also a weakness. So if you're a high D type person, or you've got quite a bit of D in you, yeah, then you've got to start thinking, right, as a D, where would I be going wrong here? What would be my weaknesses? What do I need to do differently? I probably need to spend a bit more time explaining things to people so that they understand it and can deal with it. I've got to make sure I complete and finish things. I don't just start them and leave them after when I get bored. Any high Ds here that feel they've got those traits? Jan, I know there's a bit of a fiery red D in you. So, oh, you need to unmute.
There's part me in that, but I'm not all of that.
Yeah, I think we'll all have a balance of these, but if you've got quite a high D, or you feel there'll be some things that you could sort of work on to actually improve that. If you're more of an I, yeah, then you're more of an influencer. You know, you like to sort of, you know, inspire people to get things done. The problem that a high I has is they get bored very quickly. So probably the worst, you know, completed finishes there are. Yeah, they've got what I call magpie syndrome. You know, next shiny bright thing. Yeah, if I'm trying to do the books, you know, get the bookkeeping done, which is a bit of a mundane thing, and then a client phones, oh, I'd much rather be talking to a client. Team member comes in, I'd much rather be helping a team member. So all of those tasks that should be just done, got out of the way, will get left, and then they become urgent, and then we become frustrated, and then because we're doing it, our attention to detail goes, and we do it wrong, and then we have to go back and redo it. So, I's, you know, can talk about things quite a bit. You know, if you get a really high eye in a conversation, you know you've got a high eye because they just don't shut up. They just keep rabbiting on about whatever they're rabbiting on, and sometimes they find it difficult to get to the point, and so you're wasting time. Either you're wasting time with them, you know, or they're wasting time because, you know, that's just what they like doing, talking about it. So if you're a high I, you've got to start getting a bit more understanding of, do I need to be talking to this person for this amount of time? If you're working with or for a high I, you've got to have a way to shut them up and say, yeah, I've got enough information, can I just get on and do the work? Otherwise, you're going to be there and just waste time sort of dealing with them. So eyes are good at starting things, but they're not so good at actually completing them. we come down to more introverted profiles. So S's are stable, steady supporters. They like the status quo, and their biggest problem is they generally don't say no to too many people. You can always tell a high S's desk because there'll be loads and loads of paper on it. Yeah, their to-do list will be forever. Okay, they won't be very good at prioritizing because everyone, I don't want to let anybody down. And S's will generally put other people before themselves. I think, Claire, you mentioned this about, you know, you're helping other people, but sometimes put yourself second. Okay, so time scales for S's is difficult. You know, actually plotting things down and getting things on time. So S's have got to find a system and a process in order to deal with that. To say no where they need to say no, but also make sure things are put in their place and they become a little bit more task focused rather than just sort of saying yes and then, because in their mind they'll get around to it one day. You know, they don't want to let somebody down, but because they've said yes to so many people, they eventually end up letting people down, which is the last thing they want to do. C's are our cautious, calculating, careful, compliant people. You know, their challenges are actually completing, finishing, but for them, nothing's ever perfect. So they'll drag things on just to get that last extra 10% out of it. Whereas a high D, if it's good enough, that's fine. Great, move on. So high C's procrastinate a lot. Okay, they get worried about, well, what if I don't do this? What called FOMO, fear of missing out. High C's are quite prone to that. They won't delegate things because if a job's worth doing, I may as well do it myself. No one's going to do it as well as I do. So they can be a bit hoarders of work, and they will have the same sort of piles of work on their desk, but you'll know it different to a high S because it will be neatly placed. It will be really, really sort of structured, but it will still be a bit of a far too much there. So Claire's crossed her arms and is smiling. So I'm guessing there's a bit of CS in you there, Claire.
Yeah, when I did my disc, I was almost in the middle, right on the borders of C and S, literally right in the middle. So
you've got the strengths of both, but you've got the weaknesses of both.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so for you, it's prioritizing. It's becoming a bit more D, and being really clinical and saying, right, this is important. This is what I'm going to do. This is not important, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but you've got to communicate that to the people that have asked you for the work. Otherwise, they'll think that their work is the priority, and they've got to understand where it is in the priority. So sometimes creating visibility, a Kanban board of these are all the jobs I'm doing, this is where I am, and this is where your job is.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to take on too much from everybody, but I always try and be fair and say, yes, I'll do it, but I can't promise when. So I don't overpromise, I just take on too much.
And that is okay, but if I'm the person that I've delegated to, it doesn't help me, does it?
No, but I will always get things done. But I will manage people's expectations. I won't say, yes, I can get that done, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll say, yes, I'll get that done. It may take a couple of days. And I always make sure I reach that deadline. Yeah.
So again, if it's working, that's great. If you're challenging with it and you're starting to let people down and not able to achieve those things, or you're having to work long into the night to actually deal with it, then you've got to bring in more structure to your planning, okay, and create visibility so they can see where their job is and they know it's not being ignored. Because otherwise, they're going to keep coming to you, Claire, have you done it yet? Claire, have you done it yet? Claire, have you done it yet? Claire, have you done? And you're just wasting your time answering their questions, where if you left me alone, I'd actually get it done.
Yeah, and their time.
And their time as well. So, okay. So really, time management comes, all change starts with self-awareness. Time management starts with self-awareness. If you're aware of the type of person you are and what your beliefs, could be that are holding you back, then you can do something about it. But again, only you can make that happen. It can't be anybody else. Then we come down to, okay, so that's who, so I've got my clarity around my goals. I now can work on my B, my thoughts, my knowledge. Now I need some practical tools to use in order to actually help me out with this. So the first one is to actually really get to grips with where your time goes. Okay, and this comes from, you know, a way to sort of look at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis comes from a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a guy called Stephen Covey. Habit number 4 was the way people deal with time. Okay, successful people, effective people are really, really good at time management. Unsuccessful people are rubbish at time management. So if you think about your level of success and your level of time management, they will be correlated. Okay, so if you want to be better and more successful, you've got to be better at time management. There is no other way around this. So what he said was, look, there's 4 areas that we get involved in. And he put them in order of urgency and importance. So the not urgent and not important stuff is what he called distractions. So who's like James? Can you, if you want to unmute yourself, James?
I have to do it over Gareth's one, otherwise I get feedback.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, you can look there. I can hear you when you're sort of looking at that one. So, not urgency. How do I know if something's urgent in your work, in your role?
In order it's required.
Order it's required. Yeah. So if you don't do it, what happens? So if it's urgent and you don't do it,
then it goes on to the next people. They can't do their job because I haven't done my job.
Yeah. So basically, you know if something's urgent because there's consequences. If I don't do this, there's a consequence of me not doing this. It's a bit like, go back to Brian's homework. If he doesn't do his homework, the consequences are, you know, he gets a bad mark or he's kicked out of school, or his parents find out and he's told off. Okay, so urgency is a consequence driven. It's a move away from pain response. Yeah, in order to avoid pain, consequences, yeah, it becomes urgent and I do it. So at this point, it's not, there's no urgency to this. There's no consequence of doing it. But how do I know if something's important or not? So if urgency is a consequence, how do I know if something's important?
So if you don't do it by a certain date, then there's potentially going to be a negative consequence, but not right now.
That's urgency. So urgency is about the consequence. Important is something different. Gareth, any?
No idea.
No idea. It's good. So
more to do with the impact it will have if you do it.
Yeah, yes. Be a bit more specific. What impact, if I do it, what impact is it going to have?
Positive impact.
Positive impact is going to move me towards achieving my goals. Okay, so it's something that's important is all about the goal. So if I've set a goal, yeah, and that's important to me, that goal, then I now know if something's important. If I have no goals, I have no importance. So we've got to have this balance. If we're constantly reacting to urgency and we're not focused on importance, then we're always going to be firefighting. If we bring in this sense of I've got goals now I know what's important. So a distraction is something that's not important. It's not going to help me achieve my goal, and there's no consequence of me not doing it now. So I just get distracted. It's like I sit there, you know, on the computer, and suddenly I'm in Google looking at some strange site for something, you know, or I get sucked into Facebook. And suddenly you're sitting there going, how did I get here? You know, I've just been distracted and doing stuff. Okay, so again, we've got to be aware of where our time goes, and we've got to get rid of this stuff. Okay, if we're distracted, then we've got to stop being distracted. We've got to change our environment. Yeah, maybe not look at the computer, switch the phone off, whatever it takes. We've got to stop doing the not urgent, not important stuff. The next one is a little bit more difficult because now it's urgent as a consequence of not doing it, but it's not important. So it's not helping me achieve my goals, but there's a consequence of not doing it. And this is where we get deluded, helping other people achieve their goals at the expense of me achieving my goal. And this is where the S's, I's and S's can get sucked in because they're so, they don't want to let other people down. They want to help people, but they end up being busy. So they'll be busy 9 to 5 helping everybody else, and then they have to do their own work after 5 o'clock. So there's a delusion of being busy, but we're not moving towards our own personal goals. So again, we've got to look at this and say, look, I've got to put here buffers, and protection to stop me being sidetracked and being delusional by helping other people. I'm not saying you just become an obnoxious person, but you've got to protect it so that you can reduce this down. So this remove, this has got to be reduced. Okay. Then we've got this urgency and importance. So it's now urgent. If we don't do it, there's a consequence, and it is important. So this is all the stuff that because we were doing this and we were doing this, we never did, we left it to the last minute. This is where the Brian situation is. I've left it to the last minute. It's now urgent, and now it's important. So I'm constantly firefighting here. Yeah. And if I'm too much here, what I'm not doing is actually this stuff, which is the not urgent but important. The stuff that's going to help me achieve my goals, but is not urgent. I don't have to do it now. And this is what he called the successful people in life spend most of their time in the zone, doing stuff that they don't have to do now, but it's actually moving them towards their goals. And if we do this, and this reduces, we put buffers in place and protection to reduce this, and we stop this. So each one of these is putting more and more time into this. So if you don't have enough time to work on your business or move you towards your goals, then it's generally because these three things are tripping you up. And the first thing is you've got to identify what are they? What are my distractions? What are my delusion? And why am I constantly firefighting in demand? And look at ways to reduce them to give you more time to be spent doing this. Now, if you have no goals and nothing is important, then there's no need to do this, and you can live your life over here. But you're never going to progress. You're never going to move forwards. Okay, you've got to have those goals to be working towards. So if we look at these, resist and cease, phone calls, chat, gossip, pointless routines, reject, trivia, interruptions, get yourself out of some meetings. Often people are in too many meetings too often. There should be enough meetings to get things done, not too many where, you just get frustrated that I'm sitting in a meeting that, I haven't contributed for the last hour to this meeting, so what's the point? Do now, get things done. Why am I in this state? Why am I in this state of urgency? But sometimes it's a case of I can clear the decks, and it's all done, and then focus in this area, planning stuff, the strategic stuff, then I'm probably going to avoid going back into my urgency and firefighting mode. Does that resonate with any of you? Dan, can you see how you could reduce some of those and move, create some space for that not urgent, important stuff?
Yeah, so I think what I need to do is Craig came back to work from having worked at home forever, about 4 weeks ago. And I think that's had a massive impact. So I'm going to put him in a different room.
Yeah.
Change my environment. And I'm aware that since he's came back, he loves to talk, which is lovely. You know, it's great to actually have somebody to bounce off. But I'm aware that because he's so busy, whilst he managed at home and he did work over and above, which he was rewarded for financially, since he's came back, I'm starting to pick up like orders a lot more. And I do feel that my productivity's dropped as far as the important, not urgent.
Right.
So I know what I need to do by looking at this. This has really helped, Kevin.
Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So again, be aware of it. You know, this is, so we've only got 24 hours in a day, 8-10 hours at work. If you're not using it and using it in the right place, then you've got to take ownership of it and do something about it. Okay. And those are the really ways where it goes. So understanding that, the first thing you really need to do is review what's going on at the moment. Okay, review where your time is going currently. Then we've got to prioritize it, then we organize it. So the way we sort of do this, the first thing you want to do is actually think about, well, what hats do I wear? Okay, now if you've just got one job, then time management should be generally easy. You've either got enough work to do on that one job or you don't have enough time. If you don't have enough time, then you've got to sort of delegate it or work a way to actually get it done more efficiently. But the biggest problem comes where we're wearing multiple hats. I'm working for 3 or 4 people. They're pulling my time. I'm trying to get this done, that done. The more hats you wear, the more challenge you're going to have around time management. So the first thing to do is say, right, what hats am I actually really wearing? And then we've got to create a time audit. Okay, we've got to do basically a timesheet. Now, some of you already do timesheets, in which case you could just go back and review your timesheets. For other of us, we won't have done a timesheet, may never have done a timesheet at all. And if we look at sort of, if we look at this, if I said, let's say I'm a business owner, my hats that I wear is I'm in charge of finance. Okay, I'm in charge of sales. I'm in charge of marketing. I'm in charge of operations. I might be in charge of some sort of client account management. Okay, and the other one is I'm also the MD. And I've got to do planning and strategy. So that's the one I want to do. Yeah. But what I'm finding is, Monday I did 2 hours there, 2 hours there, 4 hours there. I did an hour there. I did nothing there. So I've got 9 hours on Monday. Tuesday was I did 4 hours there. I did nothing of that. I did 5 hours there, 1 hour there. I did 10 hours. I did nothing there. Okay, so it doesn't have to be exact. It's not about what activities you did in that time, but you've got to be thinking about where my time is actually going. And this by doing this creates awareness. It creates your sort of vision of where your time is going. And I would say, personally, if you can and you're not sure, run it forever. Okay, but even if you ran this for a few weeks, you'd start to see a pattern of where your time is going. And then really once you've done that, and you know where your time is, then you've got to set what perfect looks like. Okay, so again, go back to visualization. You said, look, if I was doing this efficiently, I would do no more than 2 hours there. I'd do 4 hours, 2 hours there, 4 hours there. I want to be working on the business at least 2 hours, and I don't want to do any of that. I don't do any of that, and I'll be working 8 hours a day. So that gives us our vision of where we want to go. This is the actual, and all we've then got to do is how do we get from here to here. So Okay, and you're right. There's no idea of, there's no such thing as perfect, but there is in your mind what, you know, what would be a great week. What would a great week look like for you? Okay, but if you can't visualize what a great week looks like, then you'll never materialize it. It'll never actually happen for you. So you record the hours you're actually working, and then you put in what you want to happen. And then we've got this sort of gap that we've got to then overcome. And the way we overcome that is we do a little thing called a skill fun matrix. So now we start looking at thinking of the types of work that we're doing, and anything down here, yeah, in the low skill, low fun. So I don't enjoy doing it and it doesn't need my level of skill to actually make it happen. We need to get rid of that stuff. Delegate it out to somebody else, get a computer to do it, find something that really means that we're not doing that stuff. Okay, because it's just it doesn't need your skill, it's no fun, so what's the point? High fun, low skill, this stuff in here, now you've got to sort of be clear to yourself. Do you want to carry on doing that? Does your role need you to do that? Ideally, you get rid of it completely, but all I would say, sometimes we like doing things, and life should be about enjoying life. So I would say a maximum of 10% of your time should go in high fun, low skill. Give yourself a bit of a break. You know, it's a little bit like a school timetable where, you know, Wednesday afternoons was, you know, might have been sort of sport or activities, or, you know, something not taxing, but you actually enjoyed doing. Ultimately, obviously, we want to be up here. We want to be in these boxes up here. Okay, so we put that time in there. We put this time in here. The problem is always this: high skill, low fun. It needs your level of skill, but it's not actually that enjoyable. Okay. So we don't enjoy doing it, but we feel that we're the only person that can actually do that. Now, there's a thing called Pareto's law, 80-20. And what we find within this is it's a Pareto law thing, that 80% of this we should be able to de-skill. Okay, write a process, do something that actually takes the skill part of it out. And that would leave us 20% high skill. That's the bit that we keep. Now, sometimes that'll be train somebody up to do the basic bits and we just check it. So certainly within finance and admin, there's a lot of stuff that can just be done by somebody else if they follow a process, and then we just do an audit, a spot check audit, or we review it before it gets done. Okay, so this 80% then again gives us more time to use in the high skill, high fun stuff. But we've got to be clear what this actually is. So we've got to therefore set our goals, around this, and know, right, I need to be spending, I don't know, 60% of my time here, 10% down there, and that gives me 20-30% to do this stuff here. So Claire, you said, feel really rude when I say to someone, can't do that as I'm doing this. Do you want to just, because I think it's a common theme. So, but give me sort of an example.
Well, I have multiple hats, which are hysterical, trying to juggle them at the same time. And there are some days where I say, right, today is my credit control day. I'm not doing anything else, so I have to ignore emails. If you ignore emails, someone could send you something, and then you go back to them 2 days later and say, really sorry, couldn't get to it, was busy. Yeah. Or another day I'll be doing purchasing invoices. No, I've got to do that. I've got 200 to put on. It's impacting the balance if I don't get it all on there, so you don't know what's owing and what's not. And then the other side of it is doing reports, preparing stuff, booking visits in for the team. If I can't do that, I can't prepare the reports. They then go out on site. They've got no pack to take with them. Yeah. So I've let them down by not doing that. So it's really difficult making sure that I keep everybody happy while being fair and saying, can't do that at the moment.
Yeah.
And I hate saying no. It's a horrible thing to do. It's letting people down.
Yep. And I think that these are good questions. Is then what you need to do is pose these questions and say, right, okay, so how do we overcome this? How do we put another process in? How do we, potentially get some, lower value, say, lower cost support in order to de-skill this, because it's coming to you because it needs your level of skill. If we can de-skill 80% of it and just leave you with a 20%, that's going to help.
Yes, but there's nobody else to do it.
Okay.
That's the point. It is a job I do, so I have to learn to balance what I do each week to make sure that one thing doesn't build up and take longer than it needs to one week than the same another week. Again, it's balancing, managing your workload and planning so that everything has its own place without impacting anything else negatively.
Yeah. So, but if this is causing you problems, and stress and grief, and you're not happy with the way it is, then we have to do something about it.
Not causing stress or grief or problems, it's just frustration, and it's something you have to learn to manage.
Okay.
And managing your workload is the key thing.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you've got a system. So if that system is working, then fine. Okay. Then what would be one thing you could improve on it then?
Make sure I do something, each task at least once each week, so that when I come to do it, it's manageable, rather than, which I've had the last couple of weeks, been so busy, hadn't got purchase invoicing done. So instead of taking a day, it took 2 days out of this week, which has a negative impact on the next bits. Also, the flip side of getting lots of jobs in is there's lots of paperwork to do with it, which then holds everything else up.
Yep.
It's just learning to balance it, but it's developing the skills you've got to do it in a better way. Yeah.
So yeah, we can develop to learn to be better at it, but the other key thing is always think, if I'm struggling to do it now, if we were 20% busier, how would I cope then? How am I going to cope in 6 months' time when we've got twice the amount of work on? You've got to
no idea.
So that's what you've got to work on, Claire. It's not about building it for where you are now. It's building it for where you want to be in the future.
Agreed.
Because if you look at it and say, look, the thing I really, if it's going to be twice the amount of work, the number one thing, I need an assistant. I need somebody so I can give them the low skill stuff, so I can just focus on the high skill stuff.
Sometimes that's a good ideal, but not practical.
Okay, then
you just have to manage it in a better way, do it more efficiently, as you say, automate something so you can still do the same amount of work, but more time efficient.
Okay. So whatever the way is, you've got to have a vision of what that will be like in the future. Because if you don't, then all that's going to happen is you're going to have to work harder in order to stay afloat.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that you can do that temporarily for a short period of time, but if that is your only strategy, it's not
a workable strategy. No.
So we've all got to be thinking, well, if I was twice as busy, what would I do? What would that step be? Would I outsource it? Would I do it? Would I get somebody else to do it? Would I put a system in place? And that becomes part of your plan then, so that at least you know what you need to do. Going forward.
Yes.
If you don't know, then that's when you're just going to work harder and harder, and eventually you break.
If you can't recognise, you can't improve, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So once we've done those two exercises, the next thing is to say, right, now I need to start to fill my day with the important and get some structure around this. And it's a bit like trying to get rocks, gravel and sand into your jar. You've got a number of rocks, the large things, which are the important but not urgent things. I've got my medium gravel, which is my demand, which is the firefighting, and then I've got my sort of the other stuff, the gravel and sand that will go in there. So in order to get rocks, gravel and sand into those jars, what needs to go in first?
Large ones.
The large ones, the rocks. Okay, so we've got to look at our diaries and actually start thinking, and it's a little like going back to school, you know, and saying, I've got to start putting into my diary the important things that need to get done. I've got to put the rocks in first. If I don't put that rock in, that sort of working on the business or the most important thing to me that's not urgent, yeah, I don't prioritize that, then all the other stuff will go in there and hijack it. So you're really looking at sort of setting this is what we call a default diary. And the reason it's a default diary is we know that on a week by week basis, things change and you get hijacked, but this is what we're trying to come back to each week. My perfect week could look like this, I'd be happy. Okay, that's what we're trying to create. And then you can start putting, you know, the things you want to get done in those time slots. So if I looked here and said, look, you know, I've got this 2-hour session here on a Monday lunchtime to do direct mail. Okay, every Monday I should be doing some form of marketing during that 2-hour slot. What I need also is my to-do list, yeah, which is all my marketing activity, and then on the Monday morning when I do my planning, yeah, I actually then say, right, this is exactly what I'm going to do. So I now put that in my diary of my activity that I'm going to do. So I create the space, and then each week I book in the activity. Okay, but if you don't create the space, then by the time you get to this time on Monday, it's too late. It will be filled up with all the other stuff. Now, Monday might come and you've got something that's more important than this, which takes precedent, but you might be able to move it to this slot here. So I'll move it over here. Or you might just have to accept it's not going to get done this week, it will get done the following week. So creating that structure, you know, for what your week's going to look like, not only gives you that visualization, but it also gives you the framework in which to actually make sure things get done. And if you get to this point and you put all these things in, you know, and you've accounted for, you know, 40, you know, let's say 40 to 50 hours, and you've got 70 hours of work, yeah, well, that's telling you 20 hours of work isn't going to get done. So you've got to go back to the person, you know, and start saying, look, I just physically, there's no way I can get this done. Or what, yeah, I've got all of these priorities. Which one is the most priority? Which one are you happy for me not to get done this week? Okay, and if you've got no one to tell you what that is, then you have to sit there and plan that. You know, part of the coaching is to talk about it so you can get your head straight and say, right, actually, no, that is the most important. I've just got to accept the other bits aren't going to actually be achieved. Okay, now if you want copies of the default diary, the skill fund matrix, the time audit, just ping me an email. I've got templates that I can send you, and you can sort of give them a go. So, Adrian, I know you said at the beginning that default diary was something obviously we've talked about a long time. Any sort of more thoughts on that, or where do you find it falls down and is a bit of a challenge?
My default diary kind of works because not quite as detailed as we've got there, but for example, I will work from home on Wednesdays and Fridays, which then means I'm not interrupted by the team at the shop, and enables me to focus on certain things. Obviously, you know, B&I takes up a bit of time, but obviously that generates some good revenue for me, so I need to spend time on that. And then looking at obviously some of the marketing that we do. So the stuff I do at home is stuff that I can, you know, I don't need any interaction with. But what's interesting with what you've gone through with respect to your matrix for important and urgent, etc. Yeah, that was good actually. And I think what I've actually got out of this, I've seen this for a long time, is put some of my staff on this really to actually get them to understand what's urgent and what's not, because certainly with the disc analysis, disc analysis, a bit of trouble trying to work out where I sat in that. Yeah, a bit of all of it maybe. But yeah, certainly with some of the staff, I found that they fit into a category, because of the responsibilities they have and the kind of stuff they do and the way their mind works. So that was quite useful. So I think what's come out of this is one, actually having a definition of time and priorities, and then certainly I'll pop you an email to get those templates. But yeah, it's been very good actually. I enjoyed it. It's nice to obviously I've seen it quite a few years ago now, but it's nice to go over it again.
Yeah, and look, it's always one to come back to. As I said, everyone works on this in different ways. Different profiles will pick up different. High Cs like the structure of the default diary. High Is struggle with it. For them, it's too constraining, and I don't like it. But they might not like it, but they actually need it. High Cs love it, but what happens is they then it becomes all a little bit too structured for them, and things start, because it needs a sense of flexibility as well. They think everything can be compartmentalized, and then they start getting frustrated that I couldn't do my default diary this week because, well, no, you're not going to. You've got to accept that things happen outside your control, but what this should be doing is allowing you to start controlling the things you can control. Focus on what you can control, forget things you can't control.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
because that's where if stress comes in, when you're trying to control something that's uncontrollable. So focus on those things. And I suppose that brings me nicely then on another little concept, which is called the 20-mile march. So this comes from, I read it in a book on leadership by a guy called Jim Collins, who studied a number of really what it took to be a great leader. And he looked at an example of two perceived leaders. One was this guy. Anybody know who he is? No, he's the first man to get to the South Pole. Does that ring any bells?
Amundsen?
Yes, Amundsen. Okay, so a Danish explorer. And he was in a race to the South Pole against a Brit. Somebody know who the Brit was? Scott of the Antarctic. Okay, so they both set out to race to the Antarctic, and Scott was seen as a great leader. Okay, now the first definition of a great leader is somebody who helps people actually achieve the goal. Yeah, so on that basic thing, Scott fails to be a great leader. Why does he fail to be a great leader, Wendy?
Because he didn't achieve what he set out to achieve.
And even worse than that, what did he do?
Well, he caused a few people to die.
He killed his entire team.
He also had a lot of people who did very good spin after the event to make him out to be a hero.
Well, in a way, it was that sort of bravado that everyone loved. He was a great high eye. We're going to go to the South Pole. We're going to be the first people there. So he sold people on the dream. But when you go through the history of what happened and compare it to what Amundsen did, it really, it's a great story about it, because this was back in the early 1900s, so Industrial Revolution, machines were coming in. So Scott was going to go to the South Pole using machines. Okay, so he had all these sort of tanks, flatbeds with tractors on them, and he was going to, that's how we're going to get to the South Pole. That was his strategy. So they took these heavy, you imagine back in 1900, the tanks then and the machine was big, heavy stuff. They took it off the boat in the Antarctic. What happened to it?
I guess it sunk.
It all sunk and froze because it was all water cooled. And it basically hadn't been tested in those conditions, and it was useless before it even started. But he had a plan, because he said, you know, what we're going to do is we're going to have horses. Yeah, if those machines don't work, we're going to have horses. Yeah. 2 problems with taking horses to the South Pole. What do horses eat? Grass and hay. So they had to take, you know, tons and tons of hay. So they had to have loads and loads of horses and look to carry loads and loads of hay. What's the other problem with horses in the Arctic conditions?
Too cold for them.
Too cold. When horses work hard, what do?
Sweat.
Sweat. What does sweat do in -20 conditions?
Freezes.
Freeze. So the horses lasted a day before they all died.
Poor buggers.
Okay, so Scott ended up carrying their own packs on sleds. Amundsen had taken a different approach. He went and spent time with the Inuits up in the North Pole, worked out how they live, and they said, you know, we use huskies. And the beauty with huskies is they don't sweat. They're conditioned for this. And basically what you do is you don't, because you've got to feed them. Right? It's a bit grim, this one, but what you do is you take 10 times the number of huskies you need. Because when huskies perish, you feed them to the other huskies. Okay, so yeah, it was grim, but this was survival in the 1900s in a very, very difficult climate. But the thing on time management for this was Amundsen planned this out. And he said, if we're going to get there, we're going to go over terrain. We've got no idea what's going to happen. You know, sunny days, the sun can be out, the weather's great. There'll be days when it's awful. And he said, in order to get where we want to go, we are going to adopt a 20-mile march. Every single day, we're going to do 20 miles. If we do 20 miles and the conditions are easy, we're going to stop early, we're going to refresh, we're going to eat. Yeah. If the conditions are really bad, we are going to battle on no matter what. Yeah, and that was his strategy. 20 miles, that's all we do. You know, rain or shine, we do 20 miles. Scott's was, when the weather's good, we're going to do as much as we can. And when the weather's bad, we're going to hunker down and we're going to sit it out. So Scott went off to a flying start. Yeah, went really well, because obviously you got 24-hour daylight during the summer down there. And they were well ahead after the first few days, first week. But then the bad weather set in. The weather wasn't, you know, they went out, well, that's not great, we won't do any work today. Weather's not great, we won't do any work today. And eventually, it was, if you read the story, you know, it was really, really bad. And that's when I think they said, you know, I'm going out for a walk, and, you know, he never came back. So this 20-mile march is, you know, when you've got more work you can ever do, what you've got to be clear is, right, small amounts of work done regularly is far better than cramming it all in and trying to get it all done in one go. So this comes back to planning your work in and saying, right, if I break this down and I just do my 20-mile march, yeah, and do that consistently, day in, day out, week in, week out, yeah, that is going to be far better than actually leaving it to the last minute or saying, right, let's just cram this into that time space. Okay, so really think about, if you've got a big task to do it in consistent bite-sized chunks, not in big chunks. So when I was writing my first book, that I was told then that it's far better to sit down and do 2 hours, you know, a week, yeah, every single week, than trying to sort of spend a day, 2 days writing. Get into that habit of doing something consistently in a small chunk rather than putting it all into one go, because the momentum, you get the momentum and you create the good habit to actually achieve that. The other little task is to learn to eat frogs. Okay, this comes from a guy called Brian Tracy, wrote a book called Eat That Frog. which is a lovely time management book. But he said that we've all got these frogs, that we need to eat, but we don't like doing them. The taste of them, so we put it off. And we put it off, and we put it off, and we put it off until it becomes really important, and then we end up having to eat a lot of frogs. So he said, get into the habit of doing the worst thing that you have to do that week, the first day of the week, or the worst thing that you need to do that day, the first thing in the morning. Don't put it off to the afternoon, because by the time you get to the afternoon, your energy levels are going to be low, and you're going to look at it and go, oh, God, I don't want to do that. I'll put it off to tomorrow. So he said, start the day doing that worst thing. Whatever it is, get it done, because you'll feel so much better once you've done it, and it won't be hanging over you for the rest of the day. Okay. Anybody got some frogs that they've been putting off that they need to get done?
Walking the dog.
Walking the dog. I hope that's not a frog, Adrian. You've got a lovely dog. So, but if it is, get it done first thing. So, okay. So think about when you set your default diary up, get it done. And if you go back to Megan, you're probably the youngest. Certainly, you should never go on looks, but I'll go on the basis that you are the youngest on the call. So if you remember back at school, you had a school timetable, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What was always first thing Monday morning after assembly and registration? What was your first lessons?
Maths, English, science.
Maths, English, science. Yeah. So the thing that was the most important, but potentially the hardest thing to do, was always done. Double maths, double English was always the first two lessons on your timetable.
Mm-hmm.
What was always Wednesday afternoon?
PE, drama.
PE, drama. Something a bit more enjoyable, less taxing. What did you end Friday? What was Friday afternoon?
Usually like something in the middle. So, I'm trying to think now. Probably something that didn't really involve that much concentration.
You can't even remember what it was, so it couldn't have done. For me, it was woodwork, pottery, something nice to finish the week. But to be honest, if you weren't paying much attention, it didn't really matter. Okay, so when you're setting your default diary, think about these things. What's my 20-mile march? What do I have to put in every single week and just do a bit of every time? What are the frogs I need to eat? Create space to do my frogs. And get that structure in your diary so everything gets done, and fill in some nice things as well. So Friday afternoon for me is generally kept reasonably clear so I can go and play golf. Okay, but if something more important than golf comes in, which these days is very rare, but if something more important comes in, I can sacrifice that to actually achieve that particular task. So that brings us to the end of our time today, which is pretty good to finish a time mastery course on time. So somebody did say that start early, finish early. Was that you, Gareth? So what I'd like you to sort of take away from this is really think about those goals. What are your goals? Be clear. If you're not sure what they are, obviously, if you're working within a team, within a department, if you're not sure what the goals are, then please ask. I know at R&B, we've done a lot of work on 90-day plans and goals. But if you're not sure what your goals are, then you need to be asking and get clear what it is. Have a think about what your limiting beliefs are. Think about your DISC profile. Think about your belief structure, your values, identity. What could be in there that you need to work on. And there's some quick environmental changes you can do. Do you have to sort of work a little bit deeper on this in order to change? And then the actions really is to do a time audit and start to create a really good default diary that have built in those key things. Time to do sort of different activities, get your rocks in, eat frogs, and get your 20-mile marches in place. Okay, if you do those sort of 3 things, then you are going to progress. You're going to get better at this. And if you're not, then question it. Again, if you want anything specific, those tools, please email me. It's time management is a continual journey. Even the best time management people, are always working at it, because there's always something that's going to sort of knock you back, and you've got to move forward from it. So good. So any final questions, Gareth and James? Anything from you guys? And or happy with where we got to? What was the number one thing you guys got from today?
For me, I think it's really just putting a plan together of what your working week's gonna revolve around. We are spending time in the office and on site, so it changes day to day. So I think we can make a plan as best as possible, I think, for myself anyway. So to catch up with emails and all the admin stuff that I generally can't get to because I'm out on site all the time. So
yeah.
I think I just need to put a schedule together, addressing everything as and when, really, rather than get into it when I have the time.
Yeah. And if we've had it before, people have said, well, I get 200 odd emails a day. I'm just being distracted by doing emails. What you've got to start doing with things like emails and phone calls is you've got to put those filters in place. Desubscribe to as much as you possibly can. Put rules in place that send things to different boxes. I worked to a 0 inbox. I actually achieved it last Friday. I actually had nothing in my inbox whatsoever last Friday. And I took a picture of it and posted it on social media because I was so, because it happens probably once a quarter where there's absolutely nothing in it. But it's a great fit because I know then everything's been done. All my actions are sorted, or they're in places where they need to be. Okay, so if you get bombarded with phone calls, put filters in place, switch your phone off, get an answering service, redirect it somewhere else. Okay, you've got to work on ways to actually reduce the amount of noise that's coming into your life. If you don't, then you're going to struggle. So, cool, thanks a lot. Andy, what about you? What's the top thing you got out of today?
For me, it's just getting a plan in place for my working week. Similar to Gareth, I'm out on site and in the office, so it's making the best use of the time when I'm in the office, really.
Yeah.
That's probably
cool. Create the space, and then have your sort of your work you're going to do, and then schedule your priorities. Yeah. Put them in the diary so that right, that's what I'm going to work on this week. So, yeah. Cool, Claire.
Stick to my routine tasks, try not to get too distracted, and just basically improve what I'm already doing.
Okay, good stuff. Megan?
I think I'd make use of the daily sort of diary. I think I need to sort of include that. I do like a rough one of sort of larger tasks in each day, but I think I could probably do with breaking it down like hour by hour, and actually making sure it gets done.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. When I came across the default diary, it's one of the best tools I've ever used. And I still use it. My whole life is structured around it. So really, really powerful. So, good. Wendy?
The frogs.
Eat a frog.
And getting it done first.
Yeah, get it out of the way. Don't leave it there, because it does. You keep thinking about it, and the more time you spend thinking about something, it detracts from something else. So, good, Gresh.
For me, I think what I'm going to take away from it is how to structure my default diary and how to fill it in so I can work to it and keeping to it, really, and learning how to tell people no.
Yeah, I mean, telling people no in a polite way, in a way that doesn't stop, doesn't stop the company achieving its goals is key. Yeah. So,
yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Good. Raj? Not sure if he's able to speak. If you can.
I'll
Oh, okay. Brian? Brian's nodded off. Oh, no, he's there.
I am here. Sorry. Took me a while to find the unmute button. It's probably changing around my default diary, actually.
Yeah.
To kind of change the environment a bit. What I mean by that is I had allocated time sometime in the afternoons as well to do like the admin, like working on business stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But been sat in this chair for 2 hours and I'm absolutely aching. So it's not obviously conducive to sitting on. So it's changing things around, probably do it at home rather than here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, certainly, first default diary, I had one client did that, and then we looked at it and he was doing sort of those certain tasks at 2 in the afternoon. And I said, when are you feeling your most active and most energy? He said, probably between 10 and 12. When do your energy levels dip? He said between 2 and 4. So, well, why are you doing the important things between 2 and 4? Work to your own biorhythms. You know yourself. Don't do those important things when your energy levels are down. And we changed it so he was doing the sort of the more outgoing stuff that would give him energy during 2 and 4, rather than stuff that would detract his energy. And that was a key part to moving his around. So. Cool, Adrian. Finish with you.
Yeah, I think it's just go back to keep a diary for the next week or two just to see where my time's being taken up. So and that'll be the key to then see where some of that stuff can be delegated out or not actually done at all. So that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So self-awareness has got to start there. So keeping that time audit, recording where your time goes. Because you'll pretend your brain play tricks on you. You'll think that you've been really sort of productive. When you look at it, you go, actually, that's been rubbish. And if it is a bad week, well, why is it a bad week? What things have got in the way that have caused you to not achieve what you wanted to achieve? So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Good. Lovely. Well, look, I hope all it takes is one thing out of today to put into practice, and then you can move forwards. Please keep me posted, and do come back to this one in 3 months, 6 months time, because there'll be other things in there that will resonate to you. But as I said, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's a continual focus on improving your time management as you go. So it's been a pleasure working with you guys, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ta-da.
Bye-bye.